The year is 1976, and a 9-year-old Victor wakes up on the Spokane Indian Reservation after having a nightmare. His parents are throwing a party for family members in their house, and two of his uncles, Adolf and Arnold, get into a fist fight. This argument leads Victor to reflect upon the many storms that have plagued his life, most notably the year when his parents couldn't afford any Christmas presents, or when a man drowned in a puddle after he passed out drunk. But, with the help of his mother and family, Victor has survived on the reservation. Later on, a hurricane touches down nearby and brings up bad memories for all the party guests. Victor's friend, Thomas Builds the Fire, is hosting a large party after he receives a sizable payment from a power company to put electric poles on his land. Victor, Thomas, and Victor's other friend, Junior, sneak off in a truck to take magic mushrooms at a nearby lake, and they all start tripping balls. Thomas imagines Victor is stealing a horse and begins singing a strange song. Junior takes the mushrooms while driving and imagines Thomas dancing completely naked, believing that the dance would drive all white people back to Europe. Victor imagines that Junior is singing on a stage with a magical guitar. After these mushrooms wear off, Thomas tells a story about a Spokane coming-of-age ritual in which three boys need to remove all their clothing and steal horses. Victor tells a story about how his father was portrayed in a Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph. The photograph was of his father beating a National Guard soldier during an anti-Vietnam rally. After he was released from prison, Victor's father hitchhiked to Woodstock and claims to have been the only Indian to ever see Jimi Hendrix's performance of the Star-Spangled Banner. He becomes emotionally attached to the recording of the song, along with alcohol after divorcing his wife. Victor and his friend, Sadie, are attending a carnival. They spot the town drunk, Dirty Joe, passed out in a field nearby. Thinking it funny, they decide to pay an attendant to keep Dirty Joe on a roller coaster all day long. They have fun watching Joe until a crowd of white people gathers and begins to laugh as well. Once they realize what they have done, Sadie tries to leave, while Victor attempts to help Joe as he vomits and is humiliated. A security guard then chases Victor away, and he ends up hiding in a funhouse, where he stares at a distorted reflection of himself in a mirror. Victor's aunt, Nezzy, likes to make beautiful dresses and says that the woman who can wear one of her dresses will save the tribe. Later that night, as she is watching TV, her son farts so loud that it startles a nearby mouse, causing it to run up her pant leg. The son is laughing so hard that he can't even help Nezzy, which infuriates her. After the incident, as if to find relief, Nezzy gets naked and spends hours swimming in a river, ignoring her husband's and son's cries to come back inside. Thomas Builds the Fire is on trial for holding a postmaster named Eve Ford hostage. He chooses to represent himself, and does this by telling several stories from several different perspectives, such as a story about Qual Chan, an Indian who was executed for fighting for his land, and another story where he claims to be a pony stolen by a white general in 1858. The judge then questions Thomas about him murdering two white soldiers as part of a battle in 1858, and Thomas is convicted guilty of 2 counts of murder and sent to jail. In an apocalyptic alternate reality, a plague has wiped out all white people. The world outside of the reservation is empty and desolate. All Native Americans are divided into 2 groups: skins, who lived on reservations, and urbans, who lived in cities. Urbans had been weakened by the apocalypse and have developed horrible deformities. The skin narrator falls in love with an urban by the name of Tremble Dancer. An order known as the Tribal Council has ordered everything related to white people to be burned, including houses, but the narrator finds a transistor radio and secretly keeps it for himself. The narrator is sitting with his mother while she is quilting, when she asks why all of his stories about Indians are sad and depressing. Arguing against her, the narrator tells a good story. The story is about Uncle Moses, a man living on the reservation. He has a special relationship with Arnold, a light-skinned boy who is great at basketball, yet teased by other kids. Uncle Moses visits the playground to watch Arnold play, and notices that Arnold is the only kid there. Arnold then explains that he skipped a school field trip so he could see Uncle Moses, and asks Uncle Moses to tell a good story. Uncle Moses then begins to tell the story that the narrator had just begun to tell. The narrator reflects on what life could have been if the Native American population had been able to defend their land from white explorers. He then remembers several stories from his life. The first is about the time he was robbed while working at a 7-Eleven. The second is about a psychic Indian child who gave reading for patrons at the bar, and then almost always turned out correct. The narrator decides to get a reading and is told to break all the mirrors in his house and tape them to his body. When the narrator obeys, the child laughs at him. Finally, for the third story, the narrator remembers the time his family was so poor that they could only afford to eat potatoes, and in an effort to pretend they were different types of foods, used food coloring. At the end of this section, the narrator wonders about how Indians can rebuild themselves, their status, and their lives when they have suffered so many injustices throughout history. The narrator goes to 7-Eleven at 3 in the morning to buy a creamsicle, and sees that the cashier becomes visibly agitated. He knows that the cashier is afraid of him because of his dark skin, but he also understands the man's fear because he himself was robbed while working at 7-Eleven. The narrator then flashes to living in Seattle with a white girlfriend. After a particularly bad fight, he has a dream that they are an Indian chief and a missionary's wife, and that their romance sparks a war between Indians and white people. Following this dream, the narrator breaks up with his girlfriend and moves back to the reservation, where the story ends with the narrator alone and depressed.